Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV back with another Market Watch episode here. Now today we are taking a look at some cards that feel like they're undervalued at the moment. A lot of these cards definitely have the potential to trend up in value over the next little while, especially those that aren't really seeing any sort of usage in the current game. This could be for any number of reasons, from a change in the ban list to new support coming out, to just a certain card being a more popular tech choice in any given format. Now, whether that's going to be a month from now or a year from now is anybody's guess, but these are definitely cards that you will want to keep an eye on. Let's get started. So first up is a card I feel like absolutely everybody is talking about right now, and that is Crossout Designator. This card went from being incredibly hyped at over $120 a piece on its release to now being all the way down at $35 per copy. Everybody saw how much play this card was seeing over in the OCG and immediately assumed that it would have a similar impact here in the TCG as well. However, this is clearly not the case. While Crossout does see some play here, it's nowhere nearly as staple as it has been in the OCG. This could very well be due to the fact that Max C is unbanned in the OCG and Crossout is one of Max C's main counters. Naturally, I think that if Max C were to be unbanned over here, then we would almost instantly see Crossout Designator jump from $35 to maybe $70 or even $80 a piece. Ultimately though, I think it's pretty unlikely that we will see Max C unbanned here anytime soon. Now that being said, as much as I think that Crossout Designator at $120 a piece is overpriced, the card at $35 definitely feels undervalued, especially given that it's a short print in the 2021 Megatins. It's still a really useful card, able to negate things like Nibiru and Infinite Impermanence, and I think that the format just has to kind of shape up a little bit differently for this card to thrive. I do believe that this card is still underpriced and will see some upwards price movement before it inevitably gets reprinted. I think that somewhere between the $50 to $60 range is a fairly reasonable window for this card's price to fall in. If you guys don't at least own a set of this card for your own use, I would definitely consider picking up a few copies while the card's price has bottomed out before it inevitably bounces back up when it starts to see a bit more meta play. The next card that I have here is G'Darla, the Mystery Dust Kaiju. So this is a card that has been seeing a decent amount of side deck play over the last few months, maybe falling out a little bit over the last month or so. Being able to tribute your opponent's monsters from their side of the field without giving them a chance to respond has become a really big way to get rid of problematic boss monsters, with cards like DPE being able to dodge destruction or effect negation, Blackout helping to convert worms into pups, and Imperial Order being available to negate things like Dark Ruler No More. Kaijus just don't give your opponent a window to do anything and get rid of that problematic monster right away. G'Darla was a really important one because it's also a wind monster, and that meant that you could use it to tribute over the Barrier Statue of Stormwinds that was often summoned either in the Floowandereeze deck or by the Simorglink in certain Tri-Brigade or Lyrilusc strategies. Thankfully, G'Darla was reprinted in Brothers of Legend, though because the set is so new, G'Darla remains very affordable at under $1 per copy. Looking at other kaijus that have received holo bumps in the past, such as Dogoran, Jizukuru, and Gameciel, I think it's inevitable that G'Darla will trend upwards in price over time as people scoop up their playsets. I 100% believe that G'Darla at $1 each is a card that you should be buying multiple copies of, because as quantities of it decrease over time, the card will slowly gain value. Assuming it doesn't see another holo bump for whatever reason, I could see this card moving to $4 to $5 in the future. Maybe this isn't the biggest flip in terms of dollar amount, but turning a 300% profit on each copy of this card definitely seems like some good upside potential to me, so I would make sure that you scoop up these cards wherever possible. So this one might catch people off guard in a video where we're talking about cards to pick up, but I actually do think that it's worth keeping an eye on Incredible Ecclesia the Virtuous. At the moment, this is a really strong card in Sword Soul decks, and Sword Souls are one of the best decks of the current format. On the upcoming ban list, regardless of whether or not Protoss gets banned, I fully expect Sword Soul to continue to be one of the best decks moving forward. Remember, it is a very new archetype, and Konami still needs to sell Burst of Destiny, Battle of Chaos, and the 2022 Megatins, all of which contain Sword Soul cards, so there's no reason for them to kill off the deck quite yet. At the same time, Ecclesia can actually be used in the Albaz Despia deck, as you contribute Ecclesia to summon Fallen of Albaz from your hand or deck, and then use Fallen of Albaz to fuse with one of your opponent's monsters, all of which can be done without burning your normal summon. Ecclesia and DPE are the two main cards holding value from Burst of Destiny, so if something were to happen to DPE, or the DPE package in general, such as the banning of Verte Anaconda, and the whole package suffered slightly as a result, we could see a subsequent shift in value allocated towards Ecclesia. We're currently seeing DPE at $80 to $90 and Ecclesia at $60, but if the DPE package gets hit and Sword Soul and Albaz remain top tier contenders moving into 2022, then there's no reason that we couldn't see those prices basically switch and Ecclesia take that $80 to $90 price tag. Of course, I do know that not all Albaz Despia decks are playing Ecclesia, and I'm by no means saying that any of this will happen for sure, but I am saying that if you're wanting to play Sword Soul or Albaz moving into 2022, this might be your last good window to pick up Ecclesia before it bounces back up closer to its pre-sale hype prices. Alright, so this might feel like it's coming out of nowhere, but Vampire Sucker is definitely another card that you guys should be keeping an eye on. This is a Link 2 card that requires 2 zombies to make, and it has a number of effects. It lets you tribute a zombie your opponent controls for the tribute summon of your zombie monster, not so useful. It lets you special summon a monster from your opponent's graveyard to their field and turn it into a zombie, and it also lets you draw a card when a zombie is special summoned from either graveyard. Now this is one of the main cards that zombie decks end their boards with the most notable effect being the draw, though I guess it could be funny to force a hand trap onto your opponent's main monster zone in the Sky Striker matchup and shut off their back row. Anyways, I'm looking at this card because we are getting several new zombie support cards coming out, most notably some synchros and main deck cards in Dimension Force, and an interesting extender as a V-Jump promo called Changshi the Taoist. Now between all of these cards, zombies might be an interesting rogue strategy moving forward that people could turn to, and with the Eldritch engine running around in the game still completely untouched, the deck does have a lot of potential. That being said, you can still get original secret rare Vampire Suckers for around $10 a piece, and the reprint ultra rares for around $5 to $6, which honestly isn't too bad for a key card that zombies are probably going to want to run 2 copies of. It does also help that this is a waifu card as well, so naturally it gets a couple of bonus points from players just for that. I feel like zombies are one of those types of decks that just pop up in formats every now and then out of nowhere, and when it does, it causes a multitude of different price jumps. Now with all of the new support that we have coming up, after we inevitably see Necroworld Banshee and Doom King Baylor Jock reprinted, expect Vampire Sucker to be one of those cards that will jump up in price as people try to put together their deck cores. So if you don't have this card yet and you're waiting on some of those zombie cards to be reprinted, make sure that you pick up your couple of copies of this card sooner rather than later. Next up, we are on to Virtual World Lulu. It feels like not that long ago that Virtual World was one of the strongest decks in the game, setting up multiple copies of True King of All Calamities and ruining Yu-Gi-Oh! For everybody. Well, after True King was banned, it felt like Virtual World was finally in a position where people could show off other lines of play that the deck had. We saw it with the ability to make Dragoon or Kaliga, Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, and Shen Shen, on top of having a follow-up play for the next turn in your hand. However, I feel like for the last year, Virtual World hasn't really done anything too noteworthy, and people are definitely overlooking it in favor of other decks that we have in the format. However, I do believe that Virtual World could be a really strong deck after the upcoming January 2022 ban list, especially if we see all of the other decks of the format get knocked down a peg with hits to cards like Scythe and Protoss. Lulu is of course one of the main cards in the Virtual World deck, being able to dump a card and search a card at the same time, which is really awesome. This card used to be the most expensive piece of the Virtual World deck at over $20 a copy. However, even with the secret rare reprint in the 2021 Megatins, I never would have thought that this card would only be a $1 card, and that really you can buy the entire Virtual World core for under $20. Now, I'm not saying that Virtual World is going to be the best deck of the format or anything like that, but I think that the deck does have a lot of potential still, and if you're looking for a really cool deck to play with an interesting playstyle that is extremely affordable, picking up a Virtual World core just might be the way to go. You're grabbing something that has minimal downside, since I don't think it's possible for the cards to get much cheaper than they currently are, but with the potential to go up as people realize that the deck is actually pretty strong. The next card we're going to take a look at here is Ice Dragon's Prison. This is a trap card that used to be seen as one of the most powerful trap cards in the game. I remember when ultra rare versions of this card were over $50 each. Now, however, it's kind of sad to see that the secret rare versions of this card are only $7 each, while the original ultra rare printings are still around $8 to $10. This card used to provide some really valuable disruption, effectively banishing a card from your opponent's field and graveyard. Now, in the current format, however, this card just isn't as strong. As a trap, the card is a bit too slow and it doesn't provide any sort of hard negation the way that something like Solemn Strike would. However, I feel like this is just a result of the way that the format currently is. I think that eventually we will see a format again where Ice Dragon's Prison can be a powerful form of disruption, maybe in a slower format where the game is a bit more fluid and not so much about locking your opponent out of the game completely. Now, this one does feel like a little bit more of a high risk, high reward play. If the card were to get a common or other lower rarity printing, then that version would probably only be $1 or so, and that would sort of cap out how high either of the two holo versions of Ice Dragon's Prison could actually get to. However, if the card sees no reprint and starts to see play in the format once again, I could see this card easily trending back upwards to around $15 to $20 given its price history. If you guys are at locals trying to round off trades, this is a card that I would definitely try to pick up for around $5 or so if you can snag them at a bit of a lower price point, and definitely consider holding on to them until after the ban list just to see how the format shapes up. Alright guys, the final card I'm going to talk about for today is something that I have brought up in the past. It is Cross Sheep, so I feel like this is kind of a weird card for me to look at, given that it hasn't seen any play for quite a long time, and there's no real standout deck coming out anytime soon that really looks like it would be able to abuse this card. But Cross Sheep is a generic Link 2 monster that I see as being a fundamentally strong card, given the way that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is currently played. If you ritual summon to a zone that this card points to, you get to draw 2 cards and then discard 2 cards, which is massive value, allowing you to dig for combo pieces out of your deck as well as filtering your hand. And if you fusion summon to a zone this card points to, it gets you a free extra body out of the graveyard, and it doesn't put any restriction on that body other than that the body you summon out has to be level 4 or lower. This card is literally under $1 right now, including the secret rare version from the 2021 Megatins, and I feel like it's only a matter of time before Cross Sheep gets used by some sort of meta deck, and when it does, I see the card getting a decent bump up in price, and a lot of people looking back wondering why it was so cheap in the first place. Although it does have both an ultra rare and secret rare holo printing, each of them is quite affordable. I try to grab the secret rares as bulk throw-ins or use them to round off trades whenever I have the opportunity. Okay guys, that is it for today's episode. These are just my own personal opinions of cards that I'm keeping an eye on at the moment. Of course, make sure that you guys do your own due diligence and use caution before picking up any of the cards I talked about today, because as I'm sure you guys have noticed, I am wrong all of the time. Now, one thing I do want to do though is start looking at some past format cards, especially given the whole Time Wizard format encouraging people to build some retro decks. So if you guys have a favorite format that you want me to look at first, make sure you let me know in the comments section. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch episode, please do let me know by hitting that thumbs up button for me. Also make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you guys think about the cards that I recommended today, as well as other cards that you guys are keeping an eye on that have the potential to go upwards in price in the future, or just other cards that are trending on the market in general. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get all of the latest and greatest content from both Tombox and myself. And until next time, guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.